Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 26 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. In today's episode, we have Kevin Miller from Swords to Plowshares. I talked to Kevin the other day when we were scheduling this, and he started going over some of the different things that the organization does. And I was taking some notes, and I was like, oh, okay, you guys take care of homelessness. Okay. And so from there, I was thinking, I know what this organization does. And then he continued and told me about another program that they do. And then he told me about another program. And then he told me about another program. And I was like, wow, these guys are doing everything. This is really exciting to hear about all of the different programs that this organization is covering, and to find out how long they've been around really shows the staying power that this organization has. We have a lot to cover in this show, but before we get into it, I wanted to read off a couple more of the reviews. We're up to 112 now, so thank you very much. The first review is by Joel Sexton of Indie Intellect, and he says, fantastic resource. As a brother to a veteran, I can really appreciate the value of your mission in this podcast. Keep up the good work. And John Berard says, outstanding. This show is great. It is great flow, and I found many actionable tips. I recommend this show highly. And Simon W. Chan says, great for community, great show. Perfect and convenient resources for the veterans. This will help our veterans to choose the community that will fit for them. Thank you, everybody, for these reviews. And if you have not left a review, I invite you to go to veteranpodcast.com/iTunes, where you can leave a review. And what this does is when people go into iTunes and they're searching for a podcast, they might put in some keywords. They might search for veteran podcast, or they might look for veteran resources or things like that. And the algorithm that Apple has in iTunes is going to try to show them the podcast that is going to benefit them the most for what it is they're searching for. But one of the ways that the algorithm is picking that information is by looking at the amount of ratings and reviews. So the more ratings and reviews that you guys give, the more people are going to be able to find this podcast, and they're going to be able to find the resources that they need. So, like I said, thank you very much for everything that you guys are doing to help spread the word. I've been getting a lot of shares on Facebook and Twitter, and it really means a lot to me. Okay, on the show today is Kevin Miller. Kevin Miller served in the United States Marine Corps Infantry from 2002 to 2006 with multiple deployments to Iraq. He graduated from Humboldt State University with a BA in Recreation Administration and a minor in Business Administration in 2011. In 2014, Kevin was selected as a National Service Leader by AmeriCorps alums based on his term of service with Swords to Plowshares as an AmeriCorps Vista, where he worked on employment research, outreach, and helped administer a statewide employment collaborative in California. He has continued and expanded on his work at Swords to Plowshares, now as the Strategic Development and Communications Coordinator, where his primary focus of work includes building partnerships between employment and training providers, relevant state and national entities, nonprofit associations, and private employers. All right, let's jump right into the episode. Kevin, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on today, Jeremy.
Excellent. I wanted to find out a little bit about you, but before we do that, kind of give a brief description of what Swords to Plowshares is.
Well, Swords to Plowshares, we're a community-based, not-for-profit veteran service organization. We provide wraparound care to more than 3,000 veterans in San Francisco each year. That involves direct services for low-income, homeless, and at-risk San Francisco veterans, regardless of era of service or discharge status. Our services include behavioral health and substance abuse counseling, case management, crisis intervention, money management assistance, employment and vocational training, supportive housing, housing placement assistance, and benefits advocacy.
That's a lot of stuff. And we're going to get into all of that in just a second. But before we do, let's find out a little bit more about who you are, Kevin.
Actually, I'm a former Marine sergeant. I was in the infantry from 2002 to 2006. I did 3 deployments with 1st Fast and 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines to Baghdad, Djibouti, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Ramadi, Iraq. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I went and wrestled in college at Fresno City College, and then transferred to Humboldt State, where I actually started becoming involved in veterans issues. And I led our student veteran association up at Humboldt State and helped administer an outdoor program for veterans, which was used as a program to help new and continuing students meet up and team build before the semester and school year starts. And then after I left school, I had trouble transitioning into the full-time employment workforce. And then upon struggling to maintain full-time employment, I reached out to a couple veteran peers who told me to sign up for the AmeriCorps Vista program. And that led me to Swords to Plowshares, where I first started out as their AmeriCorps Vista back in 2013, working on employment research and outreach. And then now I am still on at Swords, now as full-time staff, working, expanding on that work, now in communications and resource development.
Outstanding. And so you said that you went into the Marines. Did you have any family that was in the Marines or friends of family or anything growing up?
Well, actually, we had a little bit of everything in my family. We had someone from each service, pretty much except for the Coast Guard. So we had Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. So around the holiday times, there's always some good fun and egging on of each other with the good old branch rivalries.
Yeah, it is. It's really funny that it always ends up that way, that when you have all of the services together, it's like the family with each one being a sibling, and they'll pick on each other constantly. But if anybody ever picks on one of them, they all jump in and get their back. And so for you, that analogy was probably pretty accurate, since they were your family members that were in all of the other branches as well.
Definitely. You can definitely egg each other on as long as you're within the group, never from the outside.
Very cool. So you decided on the Marines, probably just to be different.
Definitely had to go with the hard-headed approach. I was a little stubborn myself when I was younger.
And so when you got out of the military, you said that you went into wrestling. Were you wrestling in high school or anything like that?
Yeah, I first started wrestling in high school. Then actually, upon my last deployment, the man that my mom was seeing at the time was the former junior college wrestling coach. And he told me when I was getting out of the military at the time, he's like, hey, when you go back to school, you should wrestle. And I was like, I only wrestled in high school. I didn't think I was that competitive. And he's like, well, you should go try. And he introduced me to the new coach at the college at the time. And then he said, he's like, pretty much forced me to go out. And I just went out there, and I let that hard-headed attitude make me stick with it for about the next 3 years. I couldn't quite let it go after that.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool transition there. So then you ended up going into Swords to Plowshares. You already were with the AmeriCorps Vista, is that correct? Or vice versa?
So, AmeriCorps Vista is a national service program. It's basically the civilian side of service. It's the domestic side of, like, I would like to call it the domestic version of the Peace Corps. And so I actually entered into the AmeriCorps program, and the host organization turned out to be Swords to Plowshares. And so they were looking for someone to work in on employment research and outreach, because back a couple years ago, with unemployment, especially for veterans, was in double digits. They were looking on new ways to expand on models and make their employment programs more effective out on the West Coast here in the California region.
Gotcha. Okay. Speaking of the organization, there's a lot of programs there that you guys are doing, and I didn't know that when I first contacted you, and we had a little conversation, and you were kind of going over all of the things, and it really blew me away, all of the things that you guys are doing. So we're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive into that. But the organization itself, how did that get started?
So we've been around. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. We actually started with 6 veterans who were also Vistas themselves. It was before they actually became AmeriCorps Vistas. It was just the VISTA program, which stands for Volunteers in Service to America. They were Vietnam veterans who that were very concerned back in the 1970s that the needs of their peers were not being met by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So they basically came together and started tailoring services to help veterans who had less than honorable discharges, veterans who were incarcerated. They helped to reintegrate them back into their communities by helping them provide employment, training, and other educational assistance. So we sprung from the real grassroots era of the 1970s and slowly have expanded to over the last 40 years.
40 years, that's amazing.
Yes, it's been we've had quite a history, and we've continued to expand and support veterans across all eras and all the discharge status types.
Okay, and so what areas does Swords to Plowshares, what area does it cover for veterans?
So for our direct services, we cover the 7-county area of San Francisco, of the San Francisco Bay Area. On a geographic level, we work with our state partners as well in Sacramento, and through our coalition partners out here in California called CAVSA, which is the California Associations of Veteran Service Agencies. And we're affiliated with U.S. Vets, New Directions for Veterans, Veterans Village of San Diego, and California Veterans Assistance Foundation down in Kern County, and Veterans Resource Center of America, who has a number of locations throughout California as well. And then on a national level, we do policy recommendations out and are asked to testify on the Hill a number of times of the year to the House Veteran Affairs Committee and the Senate Veteran Affairs Committee.
Wow, you guys are pretty big.
Yeah, it's tough to keep track of sometimes with all the different moving parts and the different programs and services.
And you guys are working out of how many different locations?
So we actually have our main, what we call frontline drop-in center out of San Francisco, California. And then we have a smaller drop-in center that we just expanded on in Oakland that we just opened in spring this year. Okay. And then we have 7 housing sites that either are permanent supportive housing or transitional housing sites throughout the city and county of San Francisco, which house up to 500 veterans on any given night.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then to actually go on top of that, we have a very robust pro bono legal service program, which are affiliated with 30 Bay Area legal firms, and they provide volunteer attorneys and work with our staff attorneys, and host clinics throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as in San Jose in the South Bay.
That's pretty outstanding. So let's dive into the programs. There's so many to go over here. I'm gonna kind of let you walk through them for me. give us a little bit about what each of them covers.
So I'd definitely go over this perspective as a veteran who might be low income or homeless on the street. Is we're located directly in Soma, which is the heart of San Francisco itself. So we are located where our veteran clientele is specifically at. And so you can actually walk into what we call our frontline drop-in center and see a frontline intake counselor. And an intake counselor from there will go ahead and do an assessment and see what services that veteran might possibly need and be seeking. And so they'll go ahead and conversation, and from that assessment, then they'll go ahead and refer them to what services they might be provided, whether it's employment and job training, housing placement, permanent housing, whether it's legal services to obtain disability compensation or pension, or help with a military discharge upgrade, or possibly if they need a referral for some type of mental health or substance abuse. So that would be their first step, would be to meet them at the front and then go ahead and then refer them to the appropriate services, where they'll go ahead and work one-on-one with the appropriate case manager, and then make a plan of what they would actually do en route to help improve whatever situation that veteran may be in at the time.
Okay. Let me dive into the employment training. What type of things are the veterans taught with that program?
So veterans work one-on-one with case managers and job developers to help identify and mitigate barriers to employment. They become job ready through pre-employment preparation, career counseling, and then they have options of vocational trainings. And then they work to obtain and then we also work to obtain and then help a veteran retain employment. And because we provide follow-up services with the actual employer, because we consider both the employer as well as our client to be both our clients. So we like to consider it a dual customer service approach. We want to make sure that the veteran is set up for success, and also that the employer is happy who we're sending to them. So we're going to make sure that the skills and what our veteran is looking for is the same type of skills that an employer is looking for. So make sure they're a very good match, and that way the retention rates end up staying higher. And then our employers come back to us again and again to seek out and hire more of our veterans. And so that's how we very much approach our employment and job training aspect of our services.
Well, that's cool. It's very individualized.
Yes, and then on to top of that, our policy department does HR trainings, and they provide continuing education units to human resource personnel. They go over cultural competency with them about what veterans bring to the workplace, about how they can partner with local veterans resource groups like ourselves to refer for any services that their employees might need. Then we help develop affinity groups within organizations and help them make them more robust and more effective. That way, that our veterans that are actually employed or going to be employed have support they need at the workplace and not just out in the outside community itself.
Gotcha. Great. Okay, so you covered employment, and then you mentioned that there was legal services, and that's pretty specific, correct?
Yes. So our legal services, we only do veterans law. So we only work on disability compensation and pension benefits and military discharge upgrades. We are the only organization that actually has accredited attorneys represent free of charge for both disability compensation, pension, and discharge upgrades. So that makes us unique, that we can actually take on both, and we never, ever charge a client even $1. Some attorneys that take on cases will take up to 25% in back pay if a veteran is awarded compensation.
Oh, wow. That's outstanding. That's great.
And for our success for that, for every dollar we do spend on our legal services, it usually on average leverages $25 in retroactive benefits for the veterans. And we've had over a 90% success rate in all our cases.
And then you mentioned also that you guys are helping with housing?
Yes. So housing is what I like to call our bread and butter. We've been working on housing since the 1980s when homelessness really became a predominant issue out here in San Francisco, California. We were one of the first actually housing providers. We opened up our first housing unit in the late 1980s. And then back in 2000, we were the first, we opened the Veterans Academy, which is out in the Presidio, which was the first veterans permanent supportive housing units out here in the nation, which houses up to 102 disabled, formerly homeless veterans.
Wow.
And with that, over the last 2 years, we've actually brought on another 2 units of housing. So we've gone from 5 different units of housing to 7 units of housing. And in the last year and a half, that increased our housing stock by nearly 33%. So that's how we house about nearly 500 veterans on any given night. And then we have just slowly made the announcement that we will be working with Chinatown Development Corporation again, who helped us support us for our last unit of the Veterans Commons, which houses 72 veterans. And we will be partnering them again to provide our next unit, which is called Mission Bay, which will house 50 veterans and 50 veterans and families. So about another 100 veterans and their families total. And that should be coming on 2017, early 2018.
Wow. Are you finding that the need for housing for veterans is increasing with more people getting out of the military now?
It's a very much of a different aspect for each generation and different era. It's always a need, especially out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, where housing rates are some of the highest, if not the highest in the nation, depending on what county you actually live in. So it's made our efforts to end veteran homelessness out here a little bit more difficult because the housing stock is just not available, even with programs like HUD-VASH and SFVF and Grant Per Diem. It's been still hard to house our veterans out here because there's just pretty much nothing available. So it makes it really, really difficult, but we've been still very successful in our efforts to do that. And even though we will not end it by the end of 2015, like our original estimates, we should be ending it hopefully by the end of 2016.
All right. And what other programs do we have?
Our other programs, our big ones are women's program. We've been expanding our efforts to women. We call it the Women Veteran Professional Network. They host workshops pretty much quarterly that focuses on career and professional development for women veterans of any era. That's a specific program available to them. We have our Institute of Veteran Policy that I talked about. We do trainings with HR, but besides HR, we also train law enforcement personnel on crisis intervention training to give them the tools and techniques of how to de-escalate crisis situations with veterans, and then also how to properly interact with homeless individuals. Then we also do continuing education training for VA social workers or other social workers and that are involved with veterans in one form, facet, and the other. One of the big programs that I'm very proud of is our Employment Collaborative. We actually have 2 of them. We have that are run through the Walmart Foundation. Then we have our California Employment Collaborative, which in the past 2 years we've distributed over about $1.5 million out here in California across about 20 nonprofits to hire veterans throughout the state. We work with our nonprofit partners to quarterly on with technical assistance workshops to help improve their programs, but also get feedback on how their services are going on the ground, so we can make better recommendations and tailor our programs and make them more effective out here. And with that, we've actually expanded that program out to Texas as of last year, and have a smaller employment collaborative with 5 other nonprofits out in Texas.
Oh, wow. That's great. Did we cover all of them? Because I know that you guys are doing so much.
I think that covers in the heart of our programs and services right there. Pretty much. Excellent. I might have missed maybe just a small thing here or there, but that covers the meat and potatoes of it.
Excellent. I will make sure that I put the website for your organization in the show notes, and right in there's a tab for programs and services, and under there you've got everything listed nice and cleanly for people to find.
That, and I would also like to say that we have on our website a lot of self-help materials, which you can see on the right-hand side of our website. Just click on self-help guides, and there's guides for pretty much everything of how to check into the VA, how to write your own comp and pen claim, if you want to do your military discharge upgrade yourself, and basically what to expect with the whole VA experience. So we have self-help guides to guide you through that whole process.
Oh, that's great. That's very helpful. Something else I wanted to talk about. People have told me in the past with previous episodes that I've had that they really like hearing about the success stories. Do you have any success stories that you'd like to share?
Yes, I would like to very much go off our latest video that we actually just did on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/vets helping vets. It features about 4 or 5 of our current staff members that were former clients. Many of our, we have about 40% of staff members who are veterans, and a number of them have sought services through Swords to Plowshares at one time or another. From everybody from myself included, who has used our legal department for services and the SFVF program to get housing in San Francisco, all the way up to our chief of operations, who was a formerly homeless veteran, who and now is probably one of the leading proponents for the Housing First model, and has been recognized as a leader in reintegration and providing services for homeless veterans.
Awesome. That's always cool to see a video instead of just hearing it. And I'll make sure that not only will I put that in the show notes, but I will also post that up on the Facebook page so people can go there and check that out. That's facebook.com/veteran resource podcast. And I'll post the video and you can follow that. Let me ask you this. How can people help your organization? What is it that we can do for you?
Well, I'd like to let people know, if you're not even here in our San Francisco area, the easiest way that you can support us is to follow our different social media channels. And not only when you just follow us or like us, but to share our content. When you actually share our content, it goes a long way, because you never know what veteran or other person you might impact by sharing that content. So, go check us out on our Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you see articles you like and that you feel are valuable information, just go ahead and share that. That's a big first step. If you want to become more involved beyond that and want to volunteer, you can always email us at supportvets@stp-sf.org. And we can go over different type of volunteer opportunities. We got everything from hands-on volunteer opportunities to more skill-based opportunities for those more tech literate folks. And then if you want to go to the step even beyond that and donate, you can always donate to us at swordstoplowshares.org and check out our donate section, because we will never turn down that.
Excellent. Okay. Is there anything that I didn't cover before we get into the final three questions?
I think that about covers it from all our full spectrum of services.
Yeah, you guys are doing an incredible amount of things for one organization. I really like that.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, Kevin, without any further ado, let's jump right into the final three here. Number one, who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast?
So I'm going to give a plug for another veteran nonprofit that is near and dear to me. It's called Team Red, White, and Blue. They are an organization that tries to get veterans involved in fitness and social activities, both veterans and civilians. And I would like to see them. I actually just helped them on last Friday kick off the Old Glory Relay, which started out here in San Francisco. And if you follow along with them, they will be taking our flag, Old Glory, from San Francisco all the way to D.C. and it'll arrive in D.C. on November 8th.
Very cool. Very cool. They actually were on a previous episode, and they inspired me to join myself, and I joined up with the Annapolis Team Red, White, and Blue.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I just moved here to Annapolis last month, so I haven't been to any of the events yet, but I'm definitely going this month.
Oh, you have to get out there for when Old Glory actually makes it out there in less than 2 months.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. It's going to be great.
Awesome.
Okay, what upcoming project has you fired up right now?
What upcoming project? So my upcoming project that has me fired up was actually, I talked about it briefly earlier, is our new housing unit, Mission Bay. It's a very intricate and it has a lot of moving parts to do housing here in San Francisco. So I'm very excited that we were actually awarded the contract to go on the next steps. And so working with the different partners here in the community to actually make this go from concept to reality is something I'm really excited about working on over the course of the next couple of years.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting. Really cool. All right, and the final question, this is the brain stretcher. If you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it?
And to follow up on my last statement would be for housing with this, but specifically to do women's specific housing. Currently, we do have housing for veterans' families, but we don't have gender specific housing specifically for women. So that is something that we would love to do. And if we had a donation of that size, it would be something that we would very much like to pursue.
Very cool. So for that person out there with the $10 million and they're looking for someplace worthwhile to put it, Kevin just told you what he could do with the $10 million. So for that person that wants to donate, or for anybody else out there that wants to get in touch with you, Kevin, what is the best way?
You can always go to our website at sourcetoplowshares.org, or you can email me at kmiller@stp-sf.org.
Well, thank you so much for the interview today, Kevin. I found out a lot about the organization, and I think the listeners did too. Looking forward to hearing about all the great stuff that you guys have coming up.
Thanks for so much for having me on and talk about Swords to Plowshares today, Jeremy.
All right. We'll keep in touch.
All right. Thanks. We'll do. You have a good one.
Thanks. You too. There was so much to cover in today's episode, and when I was talking to Kevin in the pre-interview, he mentioned like we could take this a couple different ways. We could go over all of the different programs that our organization covers, or we could just do a deep dive into one of the different programs, and then maybe we can have another episode in the future where we can go into another program and another one into another program. And what I thought would be a better scenario is kind of do a broad brushstroke across all of the different programs. And what I invite you to do is to hit the show notes at veteranpodcast.com/026. And you're going to see all of the links that we mentioned. And I would really invite you to get in contact with Kevin about the specific program that interested you. And Kevin can go into that deep dive, and we can continue this conversation. So this is kind of just an entryway for you to get over to Kevin and really find out more about the organization. Once again, that's veteranpodcast.com/026. That's going to give you all of the links. And as promised, I'm going to make sure that I put the link to the YouTube video in there. And also, you can watch the YouTube video right on the Facebook page. And the link to that is facebook.com/veteranresourcepodcast. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing this with everybody on social media. The listenership is growing, and I have all of you to thank for it. Okay, we will see you in episode 27.